Hi again everyone. Alright, so this is the first video in the Richard Laymon novel review series, and for the first video I've decided to take a book from the very middle of his writing career. This was published in 1990. It's The Stake. There's the cover art, which I love, one of my favourite cover art by Steve Crisp. There's the usual Stephen King blurb that you'll see on Laymon's books. If you've missed Laymon, you've missed a treat. Say that with a pinch of salt because King isn't very kind to him in his non-fiction book Danse Macabre. There's The Spine. This is one of his longer books. It's over 500 pages. And there's the synopsis, which I'll read. Okay, so it says, in an abandoned hotel in the Californian ghost town, horror writer Larry Dunbar and his friends make a chilling discovery. By chance, they stumble on a coffin hidden under the stairs. Within lies the corpse of a naked female with a stake through its heart. Though the find gives Larry the creeps, he finds himself wondering about the dead woman. Was she the innocent victim of gruesome murder, or was she a vampire? There's only one way for Larry to solve the mystery. He must pull out the stake. I'm not sure why they made that leap, that pulling out the stake is the way to solve the mystery, but they do. So, yeah, this is one of the first books of his that I ever read. I must have been about 14 or 15 or something like that. And until this rereading, I hadn't read this since that time. So very interesting to return to it. Right, so the book opens with a prologue. And the prologue sees a guy going to kill a young female vampire. And right off the bat, we get one of those Laymonisms I was talking about, because this old vampire hunter, he takes one look at the girl he's there to kill. We're told she looks no older than 17 or 18, and he instantly becomes aroused. You know, as you would, you're there to pound a stake through the chest of a corpse, and you... not a corpse anyway, but even so, I don't think you would get aroused in that situation, unless you're a Laymon character. Let me just read an extract from it. This is on page 6, this section here, near my thumb. He ached to kiss those lips, which had sucked so much innocent blood. He ached to caress those breasts, to savour their velvety smoothness, to feel the soft rub of those nipples against his palms. He ached to spread those legs and slide deep into her heat. If only she weren't a vampire. Yeah, we've all been there, haven't we? Right, you know, that is a very good example of Richard Laymon's writing. Subtle and sophisticated, it is not. But it's still fun in its way. Alright, so after that prologue, we meet the four main characters. That's Larry, the horror writer, and his wife, Jean. Larry is presumably modelled on Richard Laymon himself. He's a horror writer in his 40s, lives in a Californian town, and he has a teenage daughter. All of those things were true of Richard Laymon at the time he published this. We also meet their friends Pete and his wife Barbara. Pete is the archetypal Laymon obnoxious sidekick. You know, he's wisecracking, he's the clown, every joke he tells is stupid, he's a prankster. He's annoying, basically. And his wife Barbara exists solely for one reason. It's so that Larry can lust after her, his best friend's wife. Every single time Barbara is mentioned, it's in relation to Larry catching a glimpse of her. And as always happens with Laymon's male characters, he just becomes a horny teenager. Again, it's one of those Laymonisms which are endearing after a while. So the main plot involves those four characters. They're driving home one day and they decide, on Pete's recommendation, they decide to take a detour to this ghost town. And there's an abandoned hotel. Inside the hotel, under the stairs, is a coffin with this corpse with a stake through its heart. The opening is very good. It is. It's a fantastic premise for a story. A lot of people have said they were bored by this book because beyond the premise, there's not a whole lot more to it in terms of story. There is a fair bit of padding in this book, but I happen to like the way that it's padded, so it works for me. Yeah, but the premise is one of his best ones. It's so simple, but, you know, sometimes the simplest ideas are the best ones. So one way or another, they take this corpse back to Larry's house. There's a good scene where Larry and Pete do that in the dead of night because they don't want their wives to find out that that's what they're doing. That's not really a spoiler because it happens very early on in the book. And that's the main plot. Larry then tries to understand who this girl was and how she came to be like this. And I like those parts of the book where he's researching the story of her. There's a subplot involving their daughter Lane, 16-year-old daughter Lane, and the villain of the book. I won't say who the villain is, but the reveal was really cool. The first time I read this novel, I didn't see it coming, and it was actually quite chilling to me when I understood who the bad guy is. And he is very bad. He is one of Richard Laymon's most horrendous characters. Just purely sadistic and psychotic and psychopathic and all that stuff. The stuff he does is awful. And unusually for Richard Laymon, there's a degree of psychological insight to this villain. He's not just a mindless bloody killer. He's quite sly and manipulative, you know, kind of a Ted Bundy character. By Richard Laymon's standards, I thought he was quite a well fleshed out villain. I liked it a lot. What else did I like? So there is some tension in this novel, especially at the end, involving that villain and how he ingratiates his way into the family, the daughter's family. That was again quite a chilling scene, I thought, towards the end, because the parents have no idea who he really is, but of course the daughter does know, but for one reason or another she can't say. That was really well done. A couple of things that I felt could have been better. I think there could have been a few more twists and turns with this. Richard Laymon does often have some twists at the end, and I thought that the character of Pete, I had my eye on him from the beginning. Something off about him, the randomness with which he suggested going to this ghost town, which just happened to have this, you know, dead girl in it, in exactly the place that he suggested they go look. I thought maybe, you know, he would have been involved in this somehow. Maybe he was even the guy from the prologue who had killed her in the first place. But no, he's just an obnoxious guy. He's clean, let me put it that way. He's not in on it. What else? I would have liked a bit more information about this, because there's not just one vampire in this, there's three apparently. I would have liked a bit more description of how they came to be vampires and how they came to be killed. A few flashback scenes would have been nice there. Another thing I like about this is it gives an insight into how Richard Laymon worked and how he wrote his novels, because like I said, the main character is based on him. We get to see him coming up with his ideas. He's working on a story involving a jukebox, which is also a time machine or something like that. It's weird, but it was fun to watch him and his process, and also to learn his thoughts on the whole debacle surrounding his second novel, The Woods Are Dark. I'll talk more about that when I review that novel, but it almost ended his career and he was very bitter about it. I'm talking about Richard Laymon now, not Larry, the character. And we get to see what are very obviously his thoughts about that in this book, and his thoughts on the difference between British publishers and American publishers. So that was fun. On the whole, I really enjoyed revisiting this book. I was never bored. I like spending time with these characters. Even obnoxious Pete grew on me after a while. The ending is pure teenage boy fantasy, but it works for this kind of thing. And it's a good place to begin. If you haven't read any Richard Laymon, I would suggest starting with this, because if you hate it, then you're not going to like anything that he did. But if you like it, then he might be a writer for you. Again, you know, his writing is incredibly simplistic, but it works for what it is. There's definitely a place for this, and I don't think it's as easy as he makes it seem, honestly. Even though it is simplistic and juvenile, he does choose words carefully, and it's not easy to write a 500-page novel, which is compulsive reading, which I think this one is. All right, so that's going to wrap this one up. It's a good one. I like it very much. We'll see where it falls in my final ranking at the end of all these videos. Thanks for watching if you did watch this far, and the second review, I don't know which novel I'll do yet, but it will be along pretty soon. So take care everybody, and talk soon.